Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Survivor Social, the Survivor podcast where we dig into Survivor with a focus on the social aspect of the game. My name is David, and I am joined by a legend in the Survivor org community. She goes by many, many names across the internet, but tonight we shall call her Simona. Simona, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here. I've been trying to get on one of these episodes for so long, so I'm glad it finally worked with my schedule. Yeah, super excited to be here.
Hell yeah, we're so happy to have you. And who is your favorite of Survivor 45 so far?
I mean, it's kind of Caleb, which is like, a bummer. Yeah, like that's a bummer, but I really loved him throughout his whole run. My I would say like secondary favorite. I mean, I'm a big fan of Emily. I think a lot of people are a big fan of Emily. But her journey I think has been really awesome, and I'm really interested to see where her game goes. And I'm also a really big Kelly fan, personally. Really big Kelly fan.
Yeah, Kelly, especially in the last few episodes, has been turning it up a notch. She is originally from Connecticut, so I especially love her. But yeah, this is a killer cast in a lot of ways. And some people who, especially this episode, I feel like sort of give us an old school sort of vibe. I know Kendra strikes me as an old school character in a lot of ways, and she's just so larger than life. But yeah, this is a killer cast. And I've been doing some rewatching of Survivor Exile Island lately, and I'm loving it. I know some people aren't a fan of like the non-HD seasons, but what's your favorite go-to pre-HD season?
Oh God. I mean, that's hard. I think Borneo is just really interesting to watch. Like I watching it really just gives me like it's very like nostalgic, and it's really fascinating, I think, to think about how much the game has grown and changed over time. Um little comment stop. But yeah, I think it's really awesome to see how the game has changed over time, and like how it all started. It's so interesting to see, and also like see how the world has changed, because I think you have the whole like Survivor is a microcosm of the social world, but like it is, and like we can see through this show a lot of the social changes that have happened over the past like 20 or so years. And so I think that's something that's really interesting to me about Borneo.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't forget the blueprint where it all started. I mean, there was the original show in Sweden, but I mean, nothing broke the world the same way that Borneo did. You're so right. And before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to Survivor Now on YouTube and Spotify. And if you have any hot takes of your own that you would like to be heard, feel free to send us a message at Survivor Socialites at Instagram or Survivor Social Pod at gmail.com. And we will read them here. Speaking of which, we have a question from Sophia. Sophia asked us over email, I just recently stumbled across your podcast, and I think the concept is really cool. Thank you so much, Sophia. You're right. And growing up, she said, I watch Survivor like clockwork, but I'm getting back into it now. And I'd really like to be brought up to speed at some point. So my question is, how do you really watch Survivor? Are there certain seasons to skip? Do you absolutely need to 100% be caught up on all of the show to understand the fan base, or would you still be able to get away with some minimal knowledge? Simona, what is your take on this? What would you advise Sophia?
Okay, well, it depends on the kind of fan that you are. So I actually made an infographic for a class last year about how to watch Survivor and like different ways that you can watch Survivor. So I'm like a little bit educated on this question, but it really depends on what you're wanting to get out of your Survivor watching experience. If you want to understand every reference, every internet niche, like definitely watch every season. If you just want to kind of understand like the vibe of the new era, like what new twists there have been, those kinds of things, like you can watch like a couple of the new era seasons, like probably 41, right, was a big like welcome to the new era. And then yeah, you could pick or choose out of the other ones, I would say, for different reasons. But yeah, I mean, it really just depends, I think, what you're trying to get out of it. Personally, if you're really trying to like fully jump back in and like really get into the community, like definitely watch everything. And then like I think definitely the biggest thing is watching the season live. Like watch the season live, be active on Twitter. It's so funny to see different people's takes on Twitter and their thoughts and just all the memes and all the good things of the new era of Survivor. But that's my take.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I would love if you could share that infographic. We will gladly repost that on all of the Survivor Now media because I want your hard work to be shown and other people to learn from your expertise. And yeah, I completely agree. I think it really depends on how much Sophia wants to engage. And I think a lot of people originally get drawn in for different reasons. Some people get drawn in because of the characters. Some people get drawn in because of the locations. Wouldn't suggest the new era if that's your thing. But there's so many different ways for people to love Survivor. That's why it's had such mass appeal. So yeah, Sophia, sample it. Make it like a tapas restaurant. Pick and choose some things that you might like and stand out to you at first, and then dive deep into whatever you like. Like Simona was saying, it's such a good experience to be watching Survivor live because you get to be a part of that discourse. Even if you're not particularly, engaging the same way other people are commenting, you can still view what other people are saying and hear all of the opinions. And another fun way to do that would be for older seasons, go back and look at AMAs on Reddit to go see what other people were saying at the time or what contestants were saying. So you can sort of, see which seasons really appeal to you and what makes Survivor special.
Yeah,
So,
I'll also say a little shout out to Owen Knight, but I know Owen has this spreadsheet that I like to send to people who are just trying to get into the show, which actually goes through like from the start, like which seasons you like have to watch, and then like there's like a section, like it's very thought out, very thoroughly thought out about how to go through that. I think you can find that on his Twitter potentially. But yeah, shout out to Owen. That's also a great resource.
That's awesome. Thank you. I didn't even know that existed. But our next question comes from Maya. And you know what? You're so right. Exile Island is incredible. I actually have some things to say about Kasaya today, so I'm really excited to get into that too. But Maya messaged us on Instagram asking, are there any times that we know of when challenges were redone? Or like done multiple times? And I know of one, and it actually does come from Survivor Exile Island. So apparently they did one of those water puzzle challenges where you had to like make the pieces align in certain ways, but it was all in the water. And the Lamina tribe, aka the Terry Dietz tribe, because who really remembers anybody else from that tribe anyway? They originally won, but Aris, I'm not even going to try and say his last name. I'm sorry, Aris. You know who you are. Aris pointed out after the challenge, there was no way that the Kasaya tribe could have won because for whatever reason, the art department didn't paint their puzzle pieces correctly. And so they stopped. They had the art department go back and draw on the pieces correctly. They ran it again and Kasaya won, which I think is pretty cool. It was only for rewards, so it didn't have like huge, snowball effects for the rest of the season, but cool little anecdote. Simona, do you know of any potential challenge redos?
I don't think so. That's really interesting though. I'm curious, like, Last Gasp, 1 or 2 seasons ago, I think 2 seasons ago, they beat the challenge. And so obviously they didn't redo it, but I'm curious, like, other than like it being impossible for one tribe to correctly win, if anything else would warrant a redo, especially in this new era, like how much they've paid attention and like avoided loopholes like that.
Yeah, maybe horrible weather. I think back to 42 when they had to have Jonathan. He was the only one who could get the entire tribe to like get from the water to the land. So Jeff was like, all right, we are skipping this part of the challenge, but it's always interesting to see what they do to try and make it equitable.
Well,
but
that was also,
is it really?
Yeah, no, that was crazy also just because he did that single-handedly and no one else as a tribe could even do that. Like, that was crazy.
Yeah, Jonathan is unmatched. So our next question comes from Buckley on Instagram, and he says, David, which of your buffs are you willing to sell? I want your Jabiru buff from Survivor Amazon. I'm really sad to tell you I am unwilling to sell all of them, especially my Jabiru buff. I am a huge Jenna Maraska fan. She does not get enough love and appreciation in the Survivor community as a player and a winner, and so I don't think I would ever be able to part with my Jabiru buff. Jenna, if you're out there and you want to sign it, make that happen. Anyway, our next question comes from Mike. He says, what is your favorite reward from any season of Survivor? Simona, any come to mind as your favorite?
I mean, reward challenge or like physical reward. Like I think I always love the loved ones visit. Like I think back to like watching Survivor with my family, and my mom would always cry at the loved ones visit. And it's like I low key do that too. Like you see everyone get so emotional. It's like even the people that you're not necessarily rooting for or don't really especially like just to see the emotion and like their like connection to their real life, like that always is my favorite dynamic to watch. And I'm hoping that we get some like real like loved ones on the island back in the game soon, because I love like watching the scenes of people like competing with their loved one or like getting to bring their loved one back to the beach. Like I know if I was ever on Survivor, like I would want that experience for myself, because that was something that I always loved to watch. Which I don't know, that might be a pretty basic answer, but that's probably my favorite like kind of reward throughout the seasons.
Yeah, that is really the most impactful reward. Obviously, it's important and fun to have these cultural experiences or eat some really good food, but yeah, there's nothing like having a piece of home and something stable when you're in this ever-changing game. And I always find it really interesting when the loved ones notice something. They're like, you should take this person out, or you need to do this. And it's always funny to have like an outside perspective when people are so in the game. Or I think of HB when Suri has him come to camp in Survivor Panama, and he's just such a fish out of water and amazed at what his wife has been able to do, and just so many touching moments. My answer is less sentimental. I was just gonna say Jellyfish Lake from Survivor Palau in Micronesia, just because that's incredible and what a cool visual. Like to be surrounded by all of those non-stinging jellyfish, and yeah, I'd go there anytime. But cool.
Sounds like a good
So
vacation idea.
yeah, absolutely. Anyone want to take a group vacation to Jellyfish Lake? Just Jellyfish Lake. We go in the lake, we swim, we leave.
At home, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. So let's jump into this episode. So we get back from the incredible tribal where Caleb has saved himself with the shot in the dark. This, I think, is an awesome moment in many ways, but Caleb says something that sort of confuses me, or I would like to make a clarification about. He says, this is the first time that a shot in the dark has been played correctly. I don't think that's necessarily the best verbiage, because it was just chance. It's not fair to say that the other people who played it before and it didn't work out for played it incorrectly. They were just unlucky. And I think that in some ways the producers really want to highlight Caleb as this all-around great player of the new era, which I think he is in a lot of ways. But I also think that he's kind of bad at managing his threat level, and I don't want us to keep these rosy-colored glasses on constantly. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I know you love him.
I know, I do. I mean, I just think, he's very like charismatic, right? Very charming. And I think he just was really fun to watch, and the way that he was able to just navigate all of the dynamics. I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed his confessional time. Like I was a fan. And I'm also a big fan of the game, so I'm able to take a step back and be like, yeah, I don't know about the idea of correctly playing a shot in the dark. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I guess I would argue, right, the right way to play it is just like as a last throw at the wall, right? And there are multiple people who have done that. And so it was definitely the correct time to play it for multiple people. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we now have, right? Like, I think I saw it literally on the Survivor Now page, like this new stat. It's a record of the most votes nullified, and it's definitely partially by chance. And so I think that is definitely something to take into account. But it was a good read. It was a great moment. Like my roommate and I, we lost our minds. It was a great episode and a great tribal. And so, yeah, you could definitely argue with the verbiage. And it was pretty great.
Definitely. Both are definitely true. And yeah, it made for an epic moment. And even though it wasn't, a typical idol play, so to speak, it still had the same end result and left everyone's jaws on the ground. So yeah, amazing moment from Caleb, definitely making his mark on this season. And Next, we see Bruce asking Katurah about what convinced her to vote for Caleb. But this is in front of Austin and Drew, and it makes Katurah look really bad. And we get an amazing confessional from her where she says, I am currently seethingly, ridiculously, annoyingly pissed. And I love, 3 adverbs back to back to back, especially when it's Katurah complaining about Bruce. What did you think of this play by Bruce to try and throw her under the bus?
I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about Bruce's game, like the way that he approached Caleb in the last episode, I thought was really interesting, where he's like, you need to stop, basically. And I think it's definitely slowly turning people against him, the way that he's kind of being very upfront with like Katurah. Like, I think, I don't know, it's like, what was the effect that you were trying to have with that? Like, to do that in front of like Austin and Drew, like, oh, to expose Katurah and like show Austin and Drew that like they're close when like clearly they weren't that close. But yeah, I don't know. I am not a super big fan of the public plays. I mean, I don't know, maybe because Bruce and Katurah already don't have a great relationship, like at all. They're like, he's kind of just like going for it. He's like, it's not salvageable already, so like it doesn't matter. Like, this can just like be a strategic move for me, like a maneuver. But yeah, I don't know. Not my favorite play.
Yeah, not mine either. And I think it had the effect of making Katurah even more annoyed with him and also raising some suspicions from other people. We see that Kendra is also worried about him being a liability. And we also get some more words from Bruce as well about not feeling particularly close to Kendra later in the episode. So it's not like that was a relationship that just broke because of this, but more people are becoming more and more mobilized against Bruce, which makes me sad because I'm a huge Bruce fan based off of sheer entertainment value alone. I could watch that man do the robot on a boat and seeing people get annoyed about it all day, and I would love every second of it. And I do want to touch on Kendra again for a second because she is such an old school character to me. She is, and maybe again, it's because I'm watching Exile Island recently, but she, to me, reminds me of that Courtney Merritt type of like crazy, out of the box, kooky, and I love it. She has like those intense eyes and so emotive, and I feel like if anyone from this cast, we could pluck her in an old school cast and she would assimilate very, very frequently. Am I off base with this? Or am I just a Kendra fan? And
I don't know.
like...
I can see it. Her dynamic is really interesting. I think she like vibes very differently with like different people. And it is interesting how she's like, she was really down for the girls thing, and then she was like, oh, now I'm open to working with Jake, right? Her game has been very dynamic and fluctuating, which I think is a very smart way to play, to never close a door, I like to say. But yeah, I definitely could see her in an old school season just for that way that she's very like honest and a little bit wild. Reminds me a little bit almost of Carolyn in a different way from last season. Where like, yeah, she's just very emotive and like a big character, but in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good comparison. And you're right, you always want to keep those doors open. I myself have never slammed a door in my entire life, so I can't. Just an inside joke between me and Simona. But anywho, I am really excited to see what happens with Austin because he came out of the last tribal gaining a lot. He knew that there were going to be a ton of votes being thrown at Caleb, so he said, I'm going to use this as an opportunity not to vote so I can give my idol full power. Can be used through the final 5. He's also got the amulet going on with the steal a vote. So he is either going to use these things super successfully or completely flame out. But either way, I'm very, very excited to see how all of this unfolds.
No, I am too. I mean, I talk a lot about Survivor with my roommate because we both watch together, and we've compared him a little bit to a Xander kind of archetype where you're getting kind of this heavy edit in the beginning, you're being shown to be in a good spot, you're being shown as like a little bit of a physical threat, you have advantages, you've made some social maneuvers. So I'm curious to see what happens because, like you said, Xander did, I think, kind of flame out at the end, right? He didn't have the most successful end game really at all. And so I'm curious to see if Austin's social position and his like maneuvering is more successful. I think he has really strong relationships, right? He has this 4-person original Reba alliance that seems relatively tight. And just these other relationships that, I mean, he's a pretty likable guy, I think, from what I can tell about him. Something that's also really interesting, I don't know if you know this or have talked about this, but he was actually the male alternate for this season. And so really interesting how much of a game changer he's been for someone who almost wasn't even there.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, the ripple effect. I'm very glad he's on this season. And the good news is if he wins, he wins. And if he loses, the Facebook community will still say that he was robbed, just like Xander. So he'll come out all right in the end, no matter what. I'm excited for Austin. And I would just like to say Survivor editing is incredible. It's always been amazing. There have been so many great editing jokes and transitions over the years, but they play this audio of Sifu explaining something about football players and grabbing someone's arm, and as they do that, they're showing one crab grab another crab's claw and like pulling it, and then Austin's grabbing Sifu's arm. Just all of these parallels. Like the time it must take to be like, let me go find the B-roll of that crab grabbing that other crab's claw. Like that's just incredible. And I feel like we need to pause and appreciate that because those things happen like that in the blink of an eye. But they just tie the show together so well. And I think now that the show's 90 minutes again, we get to see those things even more. Just me loving on Survivor. Don't mind me.
No, I love the little editing bits. And so shout out to Survivor at UCLA. But so my roommate is the editor of our Survivor at UCLA season. And so he's very analytical of the edit. I'm talking about him a lot, but he lives rent-free in my mind and in my apartment. So not rent-free, but but so we talk a lot about the edit because he pays very close attention. And so my mind has definitely been a lot more attuned to those types of things than I used to be, like paying attention to them. And I remember like there was one thing, I think it was with Sammy, I want to say it was with someone where they were talking about all the different things in their life that they did. And like, in the little job description, they like added each thing like as they said it. And it's like, that's so camp. Like I love when Survivor is like with the campiness of it all. And they just have those cute little moments. It's like the Katurah confessional, the no words confessional where she's just like, like it's so good. It's so good. I love the edit and all the pieces that go into it. I was gonna say actually in like on the page of the edit, I'm very curious how this Bruce Katurah rivalry is gonna play into the overall arc of the season because we did see like with the Gabler winners edit, right? The big like moment or the big whatever was his like rivalry with Ellie, which we were like, why is this getting so much attention, right? And this has been getting a lot of attention from the start. So I'm really curious to see how it has an impact on the end of the game, because if it's getting so much attention in so many episodes, it must be a pretty impactful through line this season.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There are definitely going to have to be repercussions down the road. What those will be, who knows? But right now, I'm just sitting back with my popcorn, loving it every time she rolls her eyes and every time that he stokes the flames. It is good Survivor tension. And it's good Survivor tension, and it's not aggressive or hateful or mean-spirited, because I feel like there have been seasons past, like Worlds Apart comes to mind, for example, as a season where there was a lot of malice and it was a different kind of drama. I'm happy that we can have some Survivor drama, but it isn't, hateful.
Yeah.
Because we don't want that. We got to keep it fun and lighthearted, right? And I like when the editors play into it too, and have a good laugh with us. And later we also see that Jake and I think Kendra both say we want an alliance of all original Bello plus Caleb, and I appreciate that, but they should be worried about Bruce being a liability, because he kind of just is in his own lane and doing his own thing. So, Simona, what do you do in a situation where you desperately need these numbers because you've got an opposing alliance or an opposing group, and one of your numbers is shaky? What do you do?
I think you sit down with them. You sit down with them and you say, like, where is your head in this game? Like, someone who's not Katora. I think it has to be like a Kelly or a Jake. I think the best person is probably Kelly to sit down with Bruce and be like, where is your head in this game? We've had this connection this whole time. Like, what are your thoughts moving forward, so you can kind of get a better understanding, like, predictably, of where they're going. And it does seem a little bit right where Bruce is one of the people who's like, we need to be Bellows strong, so it does at least seem like he's on that page. But I think kind of having the private one-on-one conversation to kind of lock him down, maybe even tell him to chill out. I think that's kind of how you approach that. And, like, honestly, you also, I would say, start to kind of mingle more with the other side, because seriously, I'm so big on never closing a door. I think keeping all those connections open is crucial to being able to play an adaptable, ever-changing game in an adaptable, ever-changing game. And so, yeah, I think you got to sit down with that ally, but also have a backup plan of, like, you're going to need to let them go. So you need to know what you're going to do and how you're going to
Mhm.
let them go.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah, you don't want someone getting super far to the end, or where it gets really close down to numbers and you really have to rely on someone. You want to keep people you can rely on. So I think you really have to plan around that and start immediately.
Yeah. Forward thinking. It's having a plan, but being willing to adapt to it given the other situations that change, because like you said, it's good to keep those doors open because you never know what's going to happen. And this episode is a perfect example of that, because they were split into two groups of 6 and they went to tribal. Just because you have a good connection with the group as a whole doesn't mean that the way that the groups will be divided for this particular split tribal is going to work in your favor. So having as many opportunities for communication and openness and people willing to work with you, as many as possible, never a bad thing. So you're right. It's always good to keep those doors open. And it doesn't have to be extreme, it doesn't have to be flashy, but yeah, talking with people, keeping those lines of communication open can pay dividends in the end. And I think there are a few people in the cast doing that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's something that made Caleb so threatening, right? When you come in with not really many connections left, and they talked about this at Tribal, I think it's like, where is the home that you're finding? Right? So with Caleb, right, he had all of those doors open to an extent. He was looking for a home, and I think people got threatened by how many doors he had. And so I think that's definitely the right position to be in. But like you said, he was not great at managing his threat level and managing that perception. And I think that the winner of the season is going to be someone who still has those doors, but is better at managing the perception of how many doors they really have.
Yeah, I think so too. This episode was proof that Caleb had one too many doors open. They said, it's getting a little drafty in here, Caleb. You got to close the door. Everyone's a little worried about you. And this is the price he paid, unfortunately. Speaking of Caleb, he and Bruce have a really interesting conversation, and the tone of the conversation seems to be Bruce being like, look, young child, let me use these unnecessary analogies and antiquated jargon to put you in your place and show you that I am the wise one. And what did you make of this conversation? How would you have been internally if you were in Caleb's position?
Pissed. I mean, it sucks. It's like, I know what I'm doing, da da da. It's like, shut up. Like, we're all here. I've been playing this game, well, I guess with Bruce it's a little different, but like technically for as many days, right? Bruce maybe has an extra day. Um, you can tack on there. Oh, I cut out, I think. Ooh,
It's
am
all
I
good.
back? I'm back.
Yep.
There we are. Okay. Yeah, I was like, "Oh, the lag." But yeah, no, I definitely would have been pissed. It's like, don't patronize me. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm here. He definitely was in a better, I would say, social position than Bruce to an extent, right? He goes home. But yeah, I think I would not be thrilled to be in Caleb's spot and to be told, like, this is how you need to be playing. It's like, no, this is how you need to be playing. And like, that's never the type of tone you want someone to take with you. It's like, do you really see me as your equal? Like, you want your ally to see you as their equal. And so Bruce kind of approaching Caleb with that tone, I think definitely is a turn off.
Yeah. Very much so. I think it would leave a bad taste in my mouth as well, and especially from coming from Bruce, who is someone who is playing out in front way too much and doesn't have a lot of self-awareness. And if someone who checked those boxes were trying to give me advice, I would be trying to bite my tongue as hard as possible, probably until it bled, not to say something. And then we see Kelly, who Bruce continually says is his number one ally, gives Bruce some good advice about his social game and how to talk to people. And Bruce gets kind of defensive. And I love Bruce, but I just want to be like, Bruce, stop talking. Your number one ally is giving you advice. Listen. And if he's not going to take it from her, who is he going to listen to?
Yeah.
Is this his downfall? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's like you said, you have to be able to like take the feedback. I think a really good example of that is Emily. You know, Caleb came to Emily and was like, here's some feedback. Like, I want to work with you in this game, but I need you to like make these changes so that we can move forward together, right? And she did, right? And Emily's in, I think, a really good position at this point. I hope. Oh my God. And so I think that like she's a really good example of like how to take that kind of criticism and feedback. Because she was really open. Where Bruce, I don't know if he really seems as open. I think he really thinks he's right about a lot of things. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. It definitely will be interesting to see. But, you know, he's calling Kelly his number one ally. And then in the confessional, or Kelly, did I say Ellie? Kelly, whatever.
No, you said Kelly.
Okay. So many like E-ish names. But yeah, and then in her confessional, Kelly's like talking about how he needs to go soon. Not now, but soon, right? Sooner than later. So I don't know how much longer Bruce is gonna last in this game if like the person he's calling his number one is talking about like how it's almost time to let him go. Yeah.
That's true. It seems like his days are numbered. And I also think that even if Bruce were to make it to the final three, I don't necessarily think that he has a lot of win equity. I also don't necessarily think that people will want to vote for the one returning player on the cast. So there are multiple layers at play here. If let's say the way things are now continue this trajectory and Bruce is in the final three, do you as a jury member give him your vote?
I would like to say no, but I actually was thinking about this where like there is an argument to be made where it's like, well, people were rubbed the wrong way by you, but you were able to find a way to stick around for this long. Like, I think there is certainly an argument that can be made there, but it really depends if I'm a juror, what my personal relationship was like with Bruce, and what I feel like his actual game looked like. Like socially, I think you can see that argument, but then it comes down to, okay, strategy wise, like what were you doing? And yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure this is a jury that's particularly primed to vote for Bruce, especially when the mayor of the jury house is Caleb, who's had, you know, this relationship that we've seen with Bruce where it's a little like, a little patronizing, where I wouldn't really be the biggest fan if I went to jury after those interactions being like my most recent interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on this cast, do you predict that this jury will base their votes more on interpersonal relationships and emotion or strategy? If you had to lean in one direction.
I am a gameplay girly. I know this is the Survivor Social podcast, but I am a gameplay girly. And I'm hoping that this is a more strategic leaning jury. That's kind of the vibe that I get. I think on average, this is a younger cast. And I think I don't know why, but I feel like they're not going to have as strong feelings about the personal bonds. Like, it doesn't seem like those are necessarily like aside from the ones that are getting a lot of screen time, like, okay, this is an especially positive bond or an especially negative bond. I think other than that, I'm not sure how much social game is really going to play into things. I think that the players that we're seeing with like heavier edits are the ones who are playing more strategically and having more like a more strategically successful game. And so I think that maybe we're being primed for a winner who is more strategic, because those are, you can't read the edit because they're trying to make it so you can't read the edit. But I think the people who are the most rootable right now, and really honestly like probably 80% of the cast, is having a focus on the strategic game rather than the social game. And so I think we're being primed for a more strategic end game and a more strategic winner.
Yeah, I think so too. I think out of this, the current contestants left in the game, I think that potentially Kendra, Bruce, and Katura are some people that I think that would consider voting with their heart rather than their head. But I think for the majority of contestants, then I think a lot of it will probably, hopefully, be logical. But, every jury is different. They could be like Guatemala and be very relationship driven. And, I personally don't hate emotional juries. I think it sometimes can work out for people. But
yeah, sometimes.
on that note, let us take a quick break and we will be right back.
Hi, Survivor Now podcast listeners. I am Katie from KT Designs, better known as Katie Tedesco Art on both Instagram and Etsy. I have been designing and selling Survivor products for over 7 years at my Etsy shop, including replicas like hidden immunity idols and Survivor trading cards with all of the players' stats on the back. I am so grateful for Survivor Now for giving me this shout out and helping me reach even more super fans. I love listening to their podcast. So if you are looking for some really unique reality TV products for yourself or to give a super fan in your life, come check out my Etsy shop at www.etsy.com/shop/KatieTedescoArt.com.
And we are back. And for this immunity challenge, we've got an oldie and a goodie. Did you get excited when you saw this challenge?
I did. I feel like so many memories of like, this challenge over the years. It's definitely a fun one, very classic. And I think it's always fun. There's so many fans who are playing these more recent seasons, right? Like a lot of these people who get on are big fans of the show. And so I think to be a fan and then to see this challenge would also be very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. What sticks out in my head when I think of this challenge is Survivor Vanuatu and Twyla trying to bite onto the rope that's separating each little part of this pole. And it's just quintessential Survivor. Like, we've seen the pictures on social media being reposted lately of Parvati and I think Danielle like nonchalantly standing as they're hanging off of the poles. Like, this is quintessential Survivor, right up there with the hanging your arm up until it goes numb. Good challenges. And the immunity necklaces this season are absolutely gorgeous, bright, colorful, fun. I would want to wear that. It looks cool. But the twist here is that the contestants, although this is individual immunity, they will be split into 2 groups of 6, and the person who wins overall will win a trip to the sanctuary for their group. And I think that's very exciting, although I would like to say, Jeff, stop trying to make the sanctuary where good things happen a slogan. I'm not sold. I think it's great, and if I was in that situation, I would be eating whatever they put in front of me. However, the sanctuary is kind of lame when we've had, rewards like the Great Wall of China. I know that was a long time ago, but you can't have the Great Wall of China and then your reward be like, you want a taco? Have a taco. What are your thoughts?
It's very stop trying to make fetch happen. That was like the first thing that came to mind. Yeah, I don't know. I think the sanctuary is like cool, but like I miss the loved ones. You know what I mean? I miss stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think my other thought about this whole group going to tribal council, like stop trying to make this happen, is like they just merged. Like they barely have even like they literally just came off a merge with 2 separate groups, and now we're once again not even really merged with two separate groups. Like, I think that the idea of this like demerge is a lot more impactful if you push it like down a vote or two, where it's like, okay, you've actually gone to tribal as a merged tribe, and now you're splitting into groups again, right? Instead of like being in groups. Okay, you kind of merge, but you're still in groups, right? I think it's more impactful to kind of break it up a little bit more by an actual merge, because it doesn't even feel like an authentic merge.
No, I completely agree. And I think it ultimately comes down to, and this is my personal opinion with many things Survivor, if the things that happen are intrinsic from the players or extrinsic being forced on the players. And, the extrinsic element of this being, the first person voted out won't make the jury, so there are big stakes, versus, like you said, you push this occurrence of the split tribal happening 2 votes down the line when there are going to be 10 people, 5 and 5, and maybe relationships have changed a little bit. We haven't let the merged tribe really breathe and these new relationships bud yet. So it really is just like old tribal lines with Caleb and Emily in the middle, sort of, or in different positions. But yeah, I think unfortunately this is a case where it's a little bit forced. But I really feel, if you don't mind me skipping ahead a little bit, Sifu not making the jury, my heart hurts for him. He's in like the Brandon Bellinger, like so many other people spot.
No, it sucks. It sucks to really get so close. And I think, like, especially to have be at the branded merge and then not make it, like, just call it another swap. Like, just call it another tribe swap, because that's essentially what it is. They just the numbers get funky, I guess, with who makes jury, who doesn't make jury. But yeah, no, it sucks to like feel like you've made the merge, and they give him this edit of, I just want to make jury. It's always been my dream to make jury, and then nope, you're the one who doesn't make it. Like, damn, it's such a bummer.
Yeah, my heart hurts for Sifu, and he just seems like a super fun guy. Like, he's always just playing it up for the cameras. Like, he did a little bow when they were announcing the challenge or something like that. He's just so fun. So, Sifu, regardless of what happened, we here at Survivor Social very much appreciate you. And let's get into this challenge. So there are 2 groups, 6 and 6, and they are holding on for dear life. Not for very long, but they are indeed holding on as much as they can. And Kelly wins for her group, and Dee wins for her group. And personally, I think Dee's big toes really came in handy here. Maybe there's a reason why they showed us that clip earlier on, because maybe this is going to change Dee's game, and that foreshadowing from the toes is really what did it. And I'm half joking, but part of me is very serious about this.
No, I think it's 100% an accurate read. Like, I think that was actually the purpose of that clip, because I remember seeing that and being like, what the fuck is this? Like, what am I looking at? And this is what it was. Like, that is why that clip, even if this doesn't necessarily have a big impact on her game specifically, like, it totally foreshadows this challenge win. And I just think, like, that's one of those camp moments that I'm talking about. Like, what is this edit? That's what it is. It was so purposeful in a really funny camp way. And I do think it was 100% intentional.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that too. You've got me convinced. And now I'm starting to think back to all of the instances of other things being shown in camp life, not just this season, but in general. I remember in Survivor Fiji, there was an instance where they were like zooming in on Boo Burness's feet. And now I'm like, did that have any repercussions for the season, or did they just zoom in on his feet for no reason? But anywho, as if anyone listening remembers Boo Burness. If anyone listening remembers Boo Burness, please write in. I will be so happy. I would consider selling you one of my buffs if you know who Boo Burness is. And Simona, I'm going to put you on the spot as a Survivor superfan. I want you to tell me, other than Kasaya and Lamina, what were the names of the other 2 starting tribes on Survivor Panama Exile Island?
I'm not a big tribe name person, to be honest. Like, I got you with people names a little bit.
Okay, tell me tell me then one of
Oh
the
my god.
younger women from. Okay, I'll give you the name. Bayonetta. Bayonetta is the name of the younger women's tribe on Survivor Exile Island. And we've got Danielle, we've got Courtney, and then we've got two others. Who are the two others? I know I'm at an unfair advantage because I just rewatched the season, but
Yeah, no. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
Dalton Ross is sitting at home right now being like, Sally, Sally, because apparently Dalton Ross is a huge Sally fan.
There you go.
Very, very strange. And then there's Misty, who is like the missile engineer, which was always very interesting to me and was like a proto Parvati in some ways, apparently. But anywho, Bayonetta and Viveros, in case all our listeners were wondering. But
yeah, I wasn't gonna get that. With all the love to them, I'm sure they were, very creative and impactful tribe names. But
for
yeah,
the one
no.
episode they existed
Right.
before episode 2, and they just split them into the two
Right.
tribes.
No,
But
yeah. Not a
Yeah.
piece of trivia that I have down, but
well, now you know. So now you can flex on your fellow Survivor fans. Yeah, have your roommate guess that one later, and then
yeah, good luck to him.
So as I said, so Kelly wins for her group and Dee wins for the other group, and Dee and her big toes help her win the challenge overall. She outlasts Kelly, and so her group gets to go to the sanctuary, and her group also is all guaranteed to be on the jury. And personally, Dee continues to be my winner pick. I know that she is a little out in front, and Jake calls her out later in the episode for being a huge threat, but I really felt like we've gotten a lot of really good characterization of Dee in all of the 3 tenets of the game, and we see some more of her emotional side when she's saying, I just kept thinking about my family during this challenge. I got really emotional just watching her talk about it. How did you feel when she was talking about it?
No, yeah, I definitely think it was like a good moment. And I've loved watching Dee throughout the season. I think she was a little bit purple in like the early game, but slowly started to get, more of an edit, which I think is sometimes what we like to see, right? You talk about that exponential curve where you really want your game to, really start getting a lot more screen time and like ramp up right there towards the end. And so I do think we see that with her, but I also think we see that with Kelly, who in a post Caleb world is my winner pick. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely appreciate the screen time from both of them. They're both people that I really liked in the preseason. My winner pick is usually just essentially my preseason favorite, with a little bit of additional external influence from other people in their winner picks. But yeah, I don't know. I really like the segment where, or like I said, I love a good loved ones visit, right? So kind of all of those segments about talking about home and family and the impact that this experience has for them. I always love those types of moments.
Yeah, it's very touching, and yeah, I think that Kelly is a great potential winner pick, and I'm just happy because it seems that more likely than not, a woman is winning Survivor 45, and I am incredibly excited about it. Whether it is Dee or Kelly, there's a good chance maybe it could be Emily, maybe it's even Katurah. Who knows? Sorry, Kendra and Mama J. I don't really have high hopes for either of you, but yeah, I'm really excited about that because I think that this season started off really strong on the Bello Alliance, where we saw all of the women on Bello being like, we're going to be a strong alliance. We're going to take this to the end. And like that planted the seed for me as a viewer being like, I want to see this. I want to see a woman win this season. And it seems pretty likely now.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely down for it. I think if it's not a woman, it's going to be Austin or Drew. And I think that's kind of my read, not that I ever would have predicted a Gabler win. Like, I don't want to try and predict anything after that. But, there was a lot of talk about how, like, or not a lot of talk, but some talk about how Emily applied like the day after the 43 finale. Do you know this story? Yeah,
yes.
Where she was like outraged at Gabler win, and she was like, I must right this wrong. And there's also this clip of Emily where she's like, at the, episode 1, she's like, if I don't win, this is a waste of time, right? So you have that. And so interested to see if that's like she doesn't win and she realizes it wasn't a waste of time, or if that's like setting her up to win. someone mentioned that I think there was a clip of her being like, I'm either going to be first boot or win or something like that. I don't know if that was her or someone else, but again, it's like she was almost first boot and then she wasn't, right? So, is that setting that up? But I would love to see an Emily win after the Lulu train wreck of this season
Yeah.
so far.
Absolutely. That would be very interesting for many reasons, because we would get another winner from one of the three starting tribes who was almost decimated at the beginning, because last season we had Tika, who was,
Yep.
screwed over and not like dwindling in numbers. And then we have a winner from Tika. And that would be also very interesting if we had another winner who was almost the first boot. I don't think we've had another one in that case since probably Chris Doherty and Survivor Vanuatu, who couldn't cross the balance beam. So they would be different winners for different reasons. But nonetheless, I would love to see an Emily win. So a lot of good stuff on the horizon. And so we go to the sanctuary and the red team folks are eating their tacos. And Julie, who I just discounted a little bit, has a really badass confessional where she says, we have to get rid of Caleb. Like, it has to be Caleb. He's the cat with 9 lives, and I hope he doesn't find his ninth life at my expense. And I loved that. Julie isn't necessarily the star of the season by any means, but when Julie's on screen, I'm enjoying it. I think she's almost like the Heather to Dee's Erica.
Mm-hmm.
Except I think both of them are infinitely getting a bigger edit and a little bit more inside of their minds than our cast on Survivor 41. What are your thoughts on Mama J?
No, I like her a lot. And I hope we see more of her. And I hope, again, there are a lot of these players who kind of got quieter edits at the beginning where I could see them ramping it up once these other players end up going home. My overall outlook on the edit has changed a lot over the recent seasons, and I think the only conclusion that I can come to that makes sense is that the Survivor editors edit the season based on their perspective of how the season played out. So last season, right, the reason we see Carolyn get such a big edit, even though she's a 0 vote finalist, is because the producers loved her and they saw her as a big player in the game, and they want to give her that credit because that's how they perceived the game objectively, right, from an outside non-player standpoint. And I think you could almost argue, right, for Erica and Heather, they didn't really, like, the producers didn't see them having a large impact, and so that's kind of where the edit is coming from. It's how they're seeing the game from an outside standpoint, not necessarily a winner edit, but just an edit of how the events actually took place from their point of view. And so I think that, there's always a chance that these people who are getting the big edits right now have these big moments, like Caleb, right, had a big moment. And it makes sense why he had all this buildup, because we wanted to be invested and excited about that big play. But now he's gone, and he's gone a little bit early for how big the edit was that he got, right? And so I think that's the way that makes sense. That's the only way that it makes sense to me. So maybe these other players are getting all this screen time because they make big things, whatever, and then they go out, and then we're left with these people who maybe were a little bit quieter, but we're still getting some credit where it was due as the episodes go on. So I think that could very much be the case with Julie.
That's a really interesting take, and I think time will tell, but I think there's a really good chance of other people flaming out, and then we get to see her really shine because it's an objective reflection of what really happened in the game. And I agree. I think it's for the best that we can see how it really unfolded instead of like a tweaked, polished version of absolutely everything that happened. I liked the story and the road that we got to go down with Survivor 44 and Carolyn, and it made it that much jarring when she didn't get any votes at Final Tribal. But at the same time, it was like she was a big character. She did drive a lot of the season. So you're right, and that's a really, really interesting perspective. So we go over to the other side of things with the other people, someone who will be, not a member of the jury. And I don't remember anything particularly notable here happening. I know we get a lot of Drew, and I'm going to be completely honest. Drew seems like a really nice person, but I am neither entertained nor excited about him, especially when he says that his strategy is just begging. And I feel for him because he left his advantage in his bag, and that was at camp. And, that sucks. Definitely sucks. But I am not necessarily a huge Drew fan in the game.
Drew referred to himself in episode 1. He was like, there's Drew, and then there's Basile. And I was like, ugh. Like, that was a little bit of an ick for me, but he has grown on me a lot over the course of the season. I am really enjoying the dynamics of him and Austin. You know, I wasn't the biggest fan of like him on the Swap Tribe where he like totally shuts Brando down. Like that was like a weird move to me. But overall, like I do like him. I think the way his interaction, like the alliance between Drew, Austin, D, and Julie, and that whole thing with the idol and everything was so much fun to watch. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, not a big fan of like the type of screen time he's getting. I think it's interesting, and I'm curious where he ends up because I think there have been some missed opportunities for him. But I'm not a hater by any means, and I'm glad he made it through for sure. I mean, if it was between Drew and Sifu, I was okay with it being Sifu personally.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. And we go back to the winning group, and Austin is talking to Dee in the water, and he says, "I'll vote how you want me to vote." And then he points out, your threat level has increased tremendously. And she agrees. Now, what will decide if Dee is a great Survivor player and not just a good one is how she handles knowing that her threat level is big. And if she handles it well, she very well could be the winner of the season. But Simona, what does someone do, and what's the right course of action when you realize my threat level is huge?
I think you just have to slow down. I think a big reason that she has this big threat level is kind of because of the way, that she kind of got called out at the last tribal, right? And so she had to be a little bit more vocal and kind of positioned herself against Caleb and then, worked really hard to get him out here essentially. And we see her getting the successful move. I think what's really important is that you're able to fall back. You're able to quiet down. You're able to let people steer a little bit more and fall more to the shadow and just work on securing your spot. Because yeah, you could stay out in front and like be guaranteed to win if you get to the end if you want to, but then you're not going to get to the end. So it's definitely being able to acknowledge, okay, people are looking at me, I'm gonna chill. And I don't know, it's hard with like the concept of an immunity challenge, right? Where like if you're capable, you want to win to secure your safety, because if you have a big threat level, you might be a threat, so you want to be safe, but then you win and then you increase your threat level, right? It's a little bit of a paradox. So it's definitely a fragile, a tightrope to walk for sure.
Yeah, it's incredibly tricky. And no longer do we live in the Survivor world where Tom Westman's game can be replicated. You can't just be out in front the entire time, identified as the leader, and go to the end and everyone say, you know what? Or the JT game, you know what? I'm going to lay down my game for you. You're just so great. I'm going to lay down my game for you, and I'm at peace with that. No. These are super fans. They're here for the win. They're going to go in for the kill at every possible opportunity, and I respect that. It makes it even harder, because I think that Dee is going to have to either adapt or will be thrown out. But that's always been the name of the game. And I'm really interested to see how she's going to react to all of this. But Jake in particular is mad that Dee is telling him what to do, and he wants to be in control. He says, like, this is my Survivor game. Like, I want to play it my way. And then it happens. And props again to Survivor editing. We actually get a flash forward scene with the votes for Julie and Caleb being shown at Tribal Council. And Jake starts to run us through his plan. He says it'll probably be a 3-3 vote between Caleb and Julie. And if they tie again, they'd have to go to Rocks. And only Jake, Austin, and Katurah would be eligible for votes. And Jake thinks that he can probably convince Austin not to go to Rocks and just get rid of Katurah. What did you feel? What was your reaction in the moment to all of this being shown? Like, did you actually believe that those were real votes? Or were you like, are they just tricking us? Like, what's going on?
I don't think I necessarily believed that was the exact outcome. Again, a shout out to my roommate. But he said it's like the fallacy, I don't know if that's the right word here, but of like a crime show, right? If you're shown, or like a heist, right? If you're shown the heist in advance and how it's supposed to go, it's never going to go how it's supposed to go. But if you don't see anything about the heist, then you're gonna get to watch it play out successfully, right? And so I think that's kind of exactly what happens here. And I didn't clock that at the time. I was really hoping Katurah was gonna pull through, and I get why she didn't. I don't know if it was the smartest move necessarily, but I get why she didn't. So yeah, I don't know if I necessarily bought that was necessarily gonna happen. But I definitely was hopeful that it was.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. I would have liked to see that unfold that way. And so going into Tribal, we know that for the blue group, it's going to be either Sifu or Bruce. And any other thoughts before we go into Tribal?
No, I mean, yeah, I think that's the next place we gotta go with this.
All right, so let's go. Tribal, day 14. Walk me through some of the highlights for you for that first group and the Sifu boot.
I mean, I don't know. It didn't seem particularly intricate. There was a lot of discussion that I think was pointing pretty clearly to that outcome. I think that the unresolved Katurah Bruce beef was not going to be resolved like this. And so for me, I was like, think it's going to be Sifu. Sifu has been getting an interesting edit. He had that segment, like I said, where he was like, I really want to make the jury. That's all I've ever wanted, type deal. And it's like, so yeah, I think that was the big thing there for me. I don't think it was particularly intricate or exciting. I think the focus definitely was more towards the Caleb end of things, which I think production was definitely a little bit biased towards as well.
Yeah, and bring us to that moment. What were you feeling watching that painful second Tribal as Caleb's torch was snuffed?
Sad. It's like, okay, I think Caleb should have told Katurah from the jump about Bruce's idol. I was actually confused, even from whatever the last episode or two, when that didn't happen, because they were showing them like talking and Katurah confiding in him, and so I was expecting them to go forward together, because it seemed like they had a good relationship. And Caleb throws Bruce under the bus to other people, right? In the last episode, he tells a bunch of the original Reba, about Bruce's idol. So the fact that Katurah doesn't get looped in at that point is a little bit strange to me, and so I understand why she feels burned about not having that crucial information, because people know how she feels about Bruce, right? Which is probably why she doesn't have the information, but it's almost another reason for someone working with Katurah, right, to give her that information. So I understand why she felt burned, and it's clear that no one else was really willing to give her that information. So I don't know, like, yeah, you got the information late, but what are her options really at this point? Like, if Kelly kept that from her, if Kendra kept that from her, right? If everyone kept that from her, what is her path forward? That's what I don't know right now.
Yeah, it's looking very precarious for her, and it almost harkens back to earlier in the season in the pre-merge, where we get the situation where certain people didn't know that, Sabiyah had the idol as well. And I can't remember who exactly. I think it may have been Emily who was told last minute.
Yeah, Emily didn't know.
Right. And I know that Emily wasn't really in a power position on the original Lulu, to say the least. But yeah, that's not right. That's true on paper, but it's not a great strategy to point out and emphasize the fact there's this knowledge of something pretty important that a lot of us have known. And by the way, I'm just going to mention it to you in passing right before, because I need to tell you at this last minute. So I'm only going to tell you when I need you to know this information. That can't make the person on the receiving end of that information feel good at all.
Yeah.
And you can't have the person that's in that position know that they're in that position, because that makes them angsty. That makes them want to do something about it. So I'm really intrigued to see what Katurah's path forward is going to be, like you said. So, but unfortunately, yes, we do lose Caleb with a heavy heart. His torch is snuffed, and I am very, very sad, as I'm sure you are as well. And any final words about Caleb?
I mean, I loved watching him, seriously, and if he was able to pull out that 3-3 split and like being saved in the flip vote, this man's resume was gonna be stacked. Like to have that crazy shot in the dark play, then to make it out of a tribal, right, where he just received all of the votes, and then to move on. It's almost like Jag, right? It's almost Jag from Big Brother, where literally everyone voted him out. He was literally voted out unanimously, and then he would have to have that crazy arc of coming back. And Jake was definitely down. You know, Jake was one of his bros for sure, but I don't think it was really realistic going forward. Even if he did make it out of that tribal, I don't think he was going to make it much longer. But I wish he had. I love a good deadlock where you have to, you know, strong arm someone into flipping or rocks. Like that always is wild, and I love to see that. So I do wish we'd gotten that. I think especially with D, it would have been really interesting. And I think also to see Austin's reaction, I think could have told us a lot about how he's going to, you know, be under pressure in the future in this game.
Yeah.
But you know, what a way to go out. You know, you could almost argue it's a swap screw to an extent.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely a great player this season, and will be, I'm sure, a great mayor of the jury house.
I think so too. And we've got a comment here from Executive Sessions 420 saying that Caleb's smile was irritating me anyway, so bye. Well, you know what? I think that your perception might be a little skewed from the 420 of it all, so maybe you're not seeing the smile the way that it really needs to be read, but, you know, that's okay. Anyone who smiles that much in a social game deserves... That's true. You know what? My theory is always you got to keep a stone face. You got to not smile or interact or be happy with anybody at all. And in a social game, frowning is key. That's what I always say, right, Simona?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't do it with you.
Oh no, we're smiling. God, stop it. On that note, we will take a quick break and then we will head into award season.
What's up, guys? I'm Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China, and I want to welcome you to Todd's Pop Shop. Here, me and my husband Jess, we custom make Funko Pops. We'll make literally anybody or anything you could imagine. But being that we're here listening to the Survivor Now podcast, I'm assuming you're all Survivor fans. So take a look at these. Some custom Funkos of your favorite Survivor winners, Sandra and Yul. Or how about Big Brother fans? Suri Goddess herself playing the game of Big Brother. You can also get her in Survivor form. Or maybe yourself with your favorite buff and a torch playing the game. But even better, get yourself with your favorite player like Nora here with Ozzy. And since you're listening to the Survivor Now podcast, if you mention this ad, you will get $10 off your first order and free shipping. All season long, Survivor 45 should be a good one. Mention this ad, $10 off and free shipping. I'll be watching too, still a diehard fan to this day. Hit me up on Instagram, Todd's Pop Shop, or toddspopshop@gmail.com, or on Facebook, and I will see you soon.
And we are back, and it is award season. So for those of you who are not familiar, this is the time in each episode of Survivor Social where we give away an award for the individual who we think played the best socially. And that person is the social butterfly. And then on the flip side, we're also going to give an award away to the person we think may have struggled a little bit socially, and we're going to call them the driver of the social struggle bus. So as our guest this week, Simona, who do you think is the social butterfly of this episode?
I mean, I think we've talked about them a little bit, but I think for me, it's going to be Kelly. I think it's that awareness of where she falls in the game. I think it's that close relationship with Bruce where no one else really seems to have a handle on him. And I think it's that awareness that this is not Bruce's time to go, that social awareness that people are going to want to take him out down the line. I think Kelly really is in the best spot, you know, with this Bello alliance without really being necessarily the face of it or seen in a scary way, contrary to, Dee, who does have this bigger threat level at this point and is being perceived a little bit more. So I think, socially, I think Kelly is thriving the most right now. We've seen her in a middle position, I think, the whole game. And the fact that she's maintaining that, I'm definitely impressed by.
Yeah, me too. I am in complete agreement. It has to be Kelly. And she's doing as much as she can while also keeping herself relatively out of most people's radar. And that is very impressive. And she's also taken on the huge burden of trying to wrangle Bruce. So anyone who tries to attempt that has my respect. So on the opposite side of the spectrum, Simona, who do you think should be the recipient of this week's Driver of the Social Struggle Bus Award? And it can't be either of the people who were voted out.
Yes. With love, I think it's going to be Bruce. I think we keep seeing these moments where Bruce is a little bit too direct with people in ways that people are responding to a little bit negatively. And I think people, more than Katurah, right, are starting to be rubbed the wrong way by Bruce. And so I think socially, he's in a little bit of a pickle right now. But if people start perceiving him as someone, like I said, like Kelly, right, who wants to keep him around as a potential shield moving forward, people that are going to want to target, right? I definitely see pros there. So it's a struggle bus, but it's not the end. So I think he is a little bit on the struggle bus right now, especially with those segments that we're seeing of him being portrayed a little bit negatively in a social regard.
Mm-hmm. There is definitely time for the cap to be given to someone else by the end of the season, but I agree with you once again that Bruce is the driver of the social struggle bus for this episode. But yeah, there's still time. We still love you, Bruce. But thank you all so much for joining us for Survivor Social. Thank you, Simona, for joining us and lending us all of your wisdom. You've definitely got to follow up with us with that diagram that you made, because I know that people will be losing their minds for that, Sophia especially. So thank you all so much. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and on Instagram at Survivor Socialites and Survivor Now, and shoot us an email if you want to share your hot takes at survivorsocialpod@gmail.com. And we will see all of you next week. Thank you so much.